Well, first of all, let me tell you another example of leverage that the restaurant industry has, and that is we have great brands. So when a restaurant operator speaks on behalf of his interests, he's also speaking on behalf of a brand that people like. I mean, people say, oh yeah, I've been to your restaurants, et cetera. So we start off with a good image, which makes you a better advocate because people are willing to listen to somebody that they are predisposed to like. Now, all the legislation that we complain about is at the end of the day driven by advocacy by somebody. I mean, legislation doesn't get introduced on its own. It doesn't get lobbied by itself. There's an advocate out there. There's a group of people advocating for a point of view. And restaurateurs need to be advocates for their positions, for their point of view. And some of it takes place far earlier than a piece of legislation that's already moved through the political process and it's getting close to being signed by the president or by the governor. Advocacy is nothing more than being involved in what becomes a change in the public's opinion about an issue. The public thinks wage rates should be higher, the public thinks that certain food should be taxed, et cetera. And there are advocates behind that, and we should be much better advocates for our point of view early, not late. Well, go back to the alcohol area. I think that restaurateurs need to be vocal about the fact that there's nothing wrong with social drinking prior to driving. As difficult as that is for people to get their arms around, and the reason that it's difficult is that other groups have literally changed the culture in this country when it comes to talking about alcohol. So if you say, well, I think it's okay for someone to have a glass of wine and drive, or 2 glasses of wine and drive, well, someone thinks that you're being irresponsible. Well, we need to be advocates for the point of view that there's a difference between social drinking and drunk driving. There's a difference between being opposed to an increase in the minimum wage and being opposed to an extremely high increase in the minimum wage. Nobody would fight a nickel increase in the minimum wage, as meaningless as that would be, but because you're opposed to an increase in the minimum wage doesn't mean that you're in favor of poverty. The internet has been the biggest change in the advocacy area in my lifetime, quite frankly. Today, information is traveling at light speed, a lot of information, and in fact, opinions are changing very fast. And one of the things that we have to be careful about is not waiting until the 9th inning to get involved in a game that has conceivably dire results for the industry. We have to recognize that public opinion drives legislation, drives government, and public opinion changes very rapidly today because of the internet. And to deny that is to deny what's going on around us. Well, again, you know, by yourself you can be an advocate. I mean, Norman Brinker, my mentor in the industry, had no problem when none of the other people in the industry was doing very much in this area. Norman Brinker had no problem saying, let's go to Washington, I want to talk to so-and-so. Other operators can do the same thing, and you don't have to get on a plane. I mean, senators have offices throughout the state. Congressmen have, you know, 2 or 3 offices in their congressional district. You can go in there, you can talk to the chief of staff in that office, you can talk to the congressman when they're in town, especially if you represent a brand. Again, you know, people are interested in talking to the guy that owns the such and such operation if they're already familiar with it. So you can be involved at that level, but you can also be involved through trade associations. You can be involved through ad hoc groups of restaurateurs who come together who feel that they've got an issue that perhaps is not being properly represented by the trade association. You know, leadership is what this is about. If you're interested in doing something like this, you can get other people too. People will follow an individual if they've got the compass set in the right direction and they know what to do. They just have a difficult time starting that dynamic themselves. So be a leader. Decide that no one else is doing it, why shouldn't I? Want to know more about political activity? Tune in next time.